for efficient and effective distribution power in Lagos, reduction of losses, efficiency of delivery. There is nothing that is about power delivery that the government cannot work with the distribution companies to achieve. The distribution companies are in charge now, and so they have to be held responsible for delivering quality service. It doesn't come in one day, but over time, they are supposed to grow to deliver this quality service. And when the governor was saying that the state should be a local regulator, that's actually what he meant. I don't think he meant that he is going to displace the role of the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, but that in our conception of government being part of, what we thought is the right of way. If you're going to create right of way, you have to, it's government that can provide it, because the governor is the one in charge of all land within the state. And so the government can help to ensure that things like land, a right of way, things like permits, that the distribution companies get them easier by being part owner of these. So there are institutions. One of the things that you heard from, if you were here in the morning, you heard from the former president of Georgia, is about institutions. So that when he went away, things continued to work. And what we wanted to do in power reform is, let us create those institutions. Let us create the environment whereby if we leave, they will continue to function. That's the sort of structure that's been created in the telecoms. You don't want to go back to those lines that used to exist and having to pay to get a line to your house. You are now a free mobile entity, you and your phone company. So that is what we wanted to achieve. But you can only achieve that through institutions, institutionalizing the policies, institutionalizing the reform. And the Regulatory Commission is a critical element in this. It's really the institution that ensures that people who are producing power conduct themselves in the production of power in the way they are supposed to, and that they don't price gouge the public, and people who are the distribution power the same way, and that the public also is behaving. So they are the arbiter, the middleman amongst all the transactions. And so having that institution is very important. The regulator has to be strong and have the will to deliver. This is the sort of regulation that we've achieved in telecoms. The former CEO of telecoms here will understand what this thing I'm talking about. It's very, very critical that we have a strong regulator, one that is not beholden to anybody, but the public that is to be served. We have created the Nigeria Bulk Electricity Trading Company in Nigeria, and this is really, as much as it's an interim buyer of power, but it's going to be here for a while until we actually reach a point where we say, yes, we do have power flowing to people more reliably. Its role is to purchase power from whomever is producing power and vest the power to the distribution companies. So unless the distribution companies have embedded power, they must be buying power through the Nigeria Bulk Electricity Trading Company. And the thing is, for the people who are building power plants, there's nobody that builds a power plant because of the enormity of cost of building a power plant and says, I will just build it and sell to a distribution company or government without guarantee. So you must have security, and that company provides the security on behalf of the federal government. Then you have another organization created just also to ensure clarity in delivery of fuel. And I'm glad that David Ige is here. Dr. Ige would probably talk more about that. But the Gas Aggregation Company of Nigeria is to look at the gas availability in Nigeria, and from the IOCs and whomever is producing gas, and allocate gas and give you gas purchase order if you are a developer of power. And this is a move forward in the power production sector, so that you are not just going around trying to talk to everybody and in the end not being sure of what you're going to get. So the Gas Aggregation Company of Nigeria is one of those institutions in the right direction for power. You have Power Training Institute, you have the Liability Company. One of the things we wanted to see happen is that those who are buying the companies will not have to worry about the debt owed by the various companies they are buying, so that this debt is all warehoused in one company that is supposed to address that. And that's what NELMCO is supposed to be about. This one, Electricity Management Services, addresses those things that are still to be dealt with nationally, but there is no particular company that can address it. So it's a central working system for the government. So, tariff. Ekpo is here, so he's probably going to talk about tariff. But what our goal was to achieve cost-reflective tariff. And what it is anybody, if we really are serious about having electricity in Nigeria, then we must have cost-reflective tariff, meaning tariff that shows that the person who is building the power plant should be able to make his money, recover his money, his investment over time, and be able to make a small profit, because power is not where you make huge profit, but that cost-reflective tariff is what it is about. So, but cost-reflective tariff in power, cost-reflective tariff in fuel. When we got on at about 2010, the PHCN was buying gas at 10 cents per 1,000 standard cubic feet. Now, there's nobody, unless being forced at near gunpoint, that will want to sell his gas at 10 cents. So what we wanted to do was to provide a mechanism whereby people buy the gas at transfer price to LNG. And that's at that time about $1. So once we've done that, then you set price for increments to bring it to a point where people feel, look, I want to invest in gas, if it is non-associated gas, so that all the gas in the country is not coming from associated gas. So we simply sat down with the Ministry of Petroleum. Dr. Ige was there and the minister, and we agreed. Here is what it's going to be. $1 this year, next year $1.50, the year after $2. And that's how it was done. So you now have a tariff for various things, solar, wind, and so on. And of course, I've talked about that anyone or government can now participate in power solution, a capacity building that people can now go into various aspects of power, whether they are in finance or law, and so on and so forth. All those are quite possible. Legal, financial, I've talked about, environmental, ICT, just even manufacturing of power equipment. All these are now possible. Anyway, I want to come back to ring-fenced approach. I believe that embedded power ring fencing is a way to quickly achieve power production. The state government and the distribution companies can team together to achieve this, so that you have power plants here. You have Egbin power plant, quite all right, within the state, but that power plant is for the national grid. What you want is a power plant dedicated to Lagos State. That's what you need. And I've talked about various ways that you can achieve it. I'm only here showing you what in Aba, we have a ring fence for Aba, doing exactly just that. Aba Metropolis, a power plant, 141 megawatts. We've taken the distribution network and rehabilitated distribution network, building overhead lines, building substations, and so on. And that's what needs to be done to reduce losses, both technical and collection. We even have our own gas pipeline that we built, 27 kilometers, to do this. This is the power plant with the evacuation infrastructure. You can see the gantries we built in Aba. And you can see the control areas, the balance of power plant infrastructure. All these we built as private sector. These are things that we expect that private sector should be able to do as they have come into the place. We did, you can see people on motorcycles. What these people are doing, we hired 250 young people, graduates, for 6 months. And they did what we call the demand study, much like what Lagos would have done. And that's how we got to know how much power actually Aba needs. And that's how we were able to build a power plant that will supply absolute power to that location. So you can see the infrastructure. This we built as private sector. It's not government. You see them. Or in the whole city, you can see that they are just marching along the various roads and streets. So that's the story. I believe that Lagos is quite positioned to actually achieve reliable electricity. And with the sort of mindset that we've seen here, there is no question in my mind that you can do it. Thank you.
We now go into individual contributions from the panelists. We go through the panelists one by one. They'll ask them to speak for about 5 minutes so we can save time actually to interact subsequently. So we start with Ayo. After him will come Kola, and then Charles, Damilola, and David at last.
Let me say thank you to the organizers of this conference for asking NEC to participate in this. We are most grateful for that opportunity, and I just take the opportunity to reiterate once again our admiration and our support for what the Lagos State government has been doing and will continue to do in the power sector as enablers for the possibility of delivering all the power consistently, all the time, to the populace of this state. Again, also thank you to Professor Naji for such a detailed and incisive presentation, pretty much as we would have expected from someone of his caliber in the industry. Very quickly, I'll just speak on the last bit of what he said. But before that, I would just like to, if I may, present my own perspective on this question of how to accelerate the delivery of power. Let me start from where I will conclude, hopefully. And that is that let's not be carried away by the word accelerate. Because we tend to think that if we say accelerate, it means that in 3 or 4 or 5 months, we will all have power, or 6 months, or even a year. I think if we listen carefully to what Professor Naji said, I think at the foundation of what he said is the fact that we must have the building blocks in place. And you really cannot avoid putting in place those building blocks. The question is how quickly the private sector and the public sector will come together to be able to put those building blocks so that we can actually have something to look up to. Again, let me try and also provide some perspective. Lagos State is said to have 20 million people. So the question you might want to ask is, so what is the ideal capacity? What is the ideal stock of energy that we should have to be able to catalyze Lagos State and its socio-economic engagement among its own people and with the rest of the country? If you use a rule of thumb, which is pretty much in keeping with the peers that we have, I remember that Ms. Adeshola, when she was speaking, was talking about bricks becoming brinks. Okay, if we look at our peers in that class, you pretty much say that the average is about 1,000 megawatts to 1 million people. So if Lagos State has 20 million people, what are we looking for here? 20,000 megawatts of electricity, basically. All right? Not 10,000, which I heard somebody talking about. No. Now, the other thing about this power is that power is like, it's a good thing. As soon as you have a little bit of it, you want a little bit more. Okay? Your brother who has had that crazy idea, which is being held back by the fact that he has to spend 250,000 naira on a 7.5 kVA generator, will certainly be able to do that. So it's a virtuous cycle. 20 million people will certainly not be able to cope with 20,000. They'll need a lot more. They'll need a multiple of that. Now, for that 20,000, multiply that, each megawatt, by $1.2 million in terms of cost, just for generation alone. Another 1 million for transmission and maybe 1.5 million for distribution. 3.5 million for each megawatt, just to deliver it to people. Multiply that by 20,000. There you have a little bit of a picture of what we are dealing with here in Lagos State. And this is just Lagos State alone, not Nigeria. Okay, so I'm trying to put some perspective on what the task that we all have before us. And for us to arrive at my conclusion, which is that accelerate does not mean tomorrow. It doesn't mean next week. I'm not delivering bad news here. I'm just trying to give us a reality check. All right? Accelerate does not mean tomorrow. It doesn't mean next month. It doesn't mean next quarter. It doesn't mean next year. But what can we do to try and begin to show to people that what we have is something that will actually deliver what we need? And I think that's what Prof spoke about when he was talking about embedded generation and emergency power and those kind of things. And that's really what the DISCOs, as far as I know, in Lagos State, Eko and Ikeja, are actually working on doing. But as they do that, they also need to look at the medium and the long term, because that really is what is going to deliver to Lagos State what it does need. So that's just a little bit of perspective to this question. I think that we should talk about this question of acceleration by looking at a number of things. First of all, the constraints, transmission and fuel supply. We have to work our way around the constraints of transmission, around the constraints of fuel supply. And I think Prof talked about that also. But there are also enablers, key enablers here. Lagos State itself, the government of Lagos State and its own strategy. And I would say one thing for Lagos State, it's that the strategy which it has pursued up to this point in time, I think has been spot on. But as you begin to have a lot more private sector engagement, we need to take a second look at that strategy. Should Lagos State government still be involved directly in generation? Perhaps, but maybe perhaps not also. Should Lagos State government instead begin to turn to enabling its distribution companies to be able to serve the people of Lagos State better and faster? Maybe. And Prof mentioned a few things that it could do. Acquire land, provide rights of way, remove the bureaucracy around, tax and taxation, the bureaucracy around being able to acquire rights, to be able to string your distribution lines, the bureaucracy around just buying land alone to be able to build power plants and injection substations. The distribution companies too, and their own strategy. Our DISCOs are really carryovers from the NEPA era. In structure, they haven't changed at all. What we did in reform, the fastest way we could do this was just to take the NEPA structure, 11 distribution zones, and convert them into companies. Will that work for us going forward? I'm not so sure. I think that it might be a good idea, particularly in a place like Lagos, which serves only the population of Lagos State. And in that regard, very, very fortunate. All right? Perhaps the way to go forward is to look at actually decentralizing. All right? Lagos State essentially is a collection of, is a metropolis, a huge metropolis, I would say, with various localities in there. So why don't you have a subsidiary of EcoDisco focused only on Ekpe, another one focused on Etiosa, another one perhaps on the island, another one on Apapa, and so on and so forth. And then Charles's company becomes a holding company. And you just simply deliver to your CEOs in those areas the responsibility and the objective of serving those people a lot faster. You don't need to come to that place at Marina to come and take approval to acquire or to extend access. That's what you should be doing. So do it yourself. Go and look for the money and do it, or we'll help you look for the money. So what Charles and his directors then have responsibility for doing is raising finance. This really is perhaps what I would say. And then, of course, for the financial services industry, understanding the drivers of what makes these companies tick. I think if we have all this put together, while, of course, Lagos State and Eko and Ikeja are working on this thing about embedded generation, which I'm sure Kola and Charles will talk a little bit more about, because that's their thing. All right, you'll hear a little bit more about that and how power will actually start coming into Lagos State a lot earlier than you might think, but perhaps later in the year. I think if you walk around those, then perhaps you have the makings of a strategy going forward that can actually make Lagos State that powerhouse, which it has always held the promise of being the one that will drive Nigeria forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So let's have a caller. Please try and make it maximum 5 minutes.
I would want to say congratulations to Lagos for the things they've been able to do. I've had the opportunity of having meetings with the officials of Lagos State, and I realized that they have about 40 megawatts approximately that they've been able to self-generate in spite of all the challenges that those of us in the sector face. We are, as EGMI, ready to support you in increasing the capacity you receive in Lagos State henceforth. What we've done recently is that 1,320 megawatts of capacity is what is available from EGMI power plants. Interestingly, for very many reasons, some of which I don't even know myself, the power purchase agreement we got from the bulk trader had 1,100 megawatts stated therein. So the first thing we did is to say that the 220 megawatt capacity that was not captured in the PPA will be dedicated to Lagos State alone. Additionally, the initial commitment we had with the BPE, Bureau of Public Enterprise, was that we're going to generate an additional capacity of 1,350 megawatts of electricity from EGMI, invariably doubling the capacity to 2,640. Now, when we took over in November, we realized that if we wait for the number of years originally stated in the document we submitted, we might as well just forget it. The encounter we had with the Lagos State government showed us that they urgently demand 10,000 megawatts to be able to industrialize Lagos and improve on the quality of life of the citizens. Immediately we got in, we wrote a letter to the regulator notifying them of our willingness to embark on the doubling of capacity of EGMI, and that additional capacity is coming directly to Lagos, not to the grid. However, whilst we have ambition that is laudable, since takeover we've had the following challenges. The first one is gas availability. Part of the problem we've had is that a lot of people don't know the peculiarity of the power infrastructure, that there exists a value chain, that the man that distributes electricity will have absolutely nothing to distribute if there is no gas. So the very first point that requires urgent attention by all and sundry is for all of us to get the gas readily available in order for us to be able to transmit and distribute the capacity that is desirable. Something very important that I need to state here is this. In Ikeja has the capacity to distribute 950 megawatts of electricity. In the last 7 years, the maximum Ikeja had gotten is 650, and that was only for 2 days. Since we took over, the highest capacity that has been deployed by the transmission company to us, 407 megawatts. If you don't have it to distribute, you can't distribute it. It is what is given to you that you take. At a point in time on Sunday, we were able to get 118 megawatts from the system. What was allocated by the system operator, ab initio, is that Lagos, starting with Ikeja, will get 15% of the available capacity in the system, whilst Eko gets 11%. I'm sure my brother Charles here will confirm to you when he takes over the microphone that he has never gotten that since he took over. And there is nothing on ground that can confirm to any one of us as yet that that capacity will be given to us at any point in time. Now, also, please note that for me as an individual, I've said that yes, we have a value chain. There is something that is missing out there that needs to be looked at and looked at critically by all and sundry, and that is our value system. Nigerians will go undersea, put a dynamite in a gas pipeline, disrupting the flow of gas, and all of us, 160 million, suffer for it. Nigerians will deliberately go on a transmission tower to vandalize the tower to use for whatever purpose I still don't understand. And majority of us are not paying attention to it. For me, until we get to the root of our value system, get back the culture of protecting ourselves, communal living, such that we are able to know that everything that is on ground, if we destroy it, we are destroying ourselves. Angels and devils don't fall from the sky to destroy these things. Individuals do. People that take transmission line and cut and sell in the market, somebody is buying this thing somewhere. Somebody is obviously interested in the disruption of the system, not to make it work. Also, please note, the tariff structure, like Prof said earlier, is not currently cost reflective. Part of the model some of us have recommended is that the maximum demand customers, that is the industrial users and commercial users, who currently self-supply at, say, 90 naira because of the diesel they use, can pay a little more, say 40 naira. At 40 naira, they are far better off than 90 naira. However, what they are doing is that the poor man in that chain called Nigeria